I've come to the conclusion that 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons has one of the worst initiative systems that I have played with, and I want to talk about why. So first of all, let's go ahead and open up the PHP and we'll talk about this sentence by sentence kind of in detail here on page 189 of the PHP. Initiative, of course, is what's determining the order that you're going to be acting in combat. When combat starts, every participant makes a dexterity check to determine their place in the initiative order. And of course, on one level, of course that makes sense. If your speed and agility is going to affect how fast you are in combat and that you might get to go first rather than having to wait until later and therefore attack before your opponent, well, dexterity does seem to be the statistic in advanced or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that measures that, right? So, alright, make a dexterity check. But my problem with the dexterity checks is what type of modifier are you actually going to have? I've been over the problems with the D20 on this channel before. We did a deep dive into the analysis of the effect the D20 has on the game and if we should be rolling bell-curved dice and looked at all of those statistics in detail and broke it down on this channel. So the problem is the D20 is highly random. It generates a number between 1 and 20 with a flat probability distribution, and our dexterity modifiers are things like +0 at 10, +1, +2, +3, +4. Even if you have a dexterity of 20, you're only getting a +5. That means that the random element of the check is blowing away the relevance of the actual dexterity modifier. So that means we have a very random element here to our initiative order anyway. If it makes sense, and if our goal here is for high dexterity characters to be going before low dexterity characters, then we would like to be able to see that represented in the initiative order at least most of the time, right? That would be an advantage of having high dexterity. But because the D20 is so random, and if people only have +1s, +2s, you might as well be determining initiative randomly anyway. So the DM makes one roll for an entire group of identical creatures, so each member of the group acts at the same time. So every PC has to do this, and then each different type of monster the DM has to do this. Next, it says, the DM ranks the combatants in order from the one with the highest dexterity check total to the one with the lowest. Now, this is always a thing at the table, isn't it? And so the DM has to manage that information in some way. And when I was playing at Lou's table, I think he was using like the Matt Mercer style of initiative. Don't call things out. I'm just going to go down from initiative and then you tell me where you place as I go down this initiative order. In order to record that information, we had this initiative tree on the table, which was this metal rod that was spiral. It had been worked. It looked kind of nice. But then we also had these metal flags with magnets on it where we could write our characters' names and also the type of monster on those flags with a dry erase marker, and then place the flags on this initiative tree in descending order to determine initiative. So why do you have to have something like that, right? In order to track initiative. It was good because then you have a visual representation of when your turn is going to go, right? That's good. I'd like to be able to have that so people know when they should ideally have their spells and their actions already decided on and prepared. And they should theoretically be able to look over there at the tree in order to determine whose turn it is next. They should be doing that. Now, whether they actually do that is another thing. But on the other hand, this tree over here, this is a big table, and you may not always be able to even see across the table to see when your turn is up anyway. But nonetheless, we had to manipulate this object. Okay, so we've generated this basically random order that is only slightly influenced by your dexterity statistics across the table. And you might say, hey, that's fine. Actually, combat is supposed to be random. Some people may be going first, some people may go second, and then it all gets jostled again and everything like that. In combat, maybe dexterity shouldn't really have that great an influence on combat. We're just talking about something random anyway. Well, okay, I could buy into that, but then what does the player's handbook say? It says that, okay, this order we establish is called the initiative order, which tells you the way we act. Yep, just said that. But that the initiative order remains the same from round to round. It remains the same. So, in some ways that's good, because that keeps you from having to roll a whole bunch more dice every single round, determine new numbers, call it all out to the GM, have the GM or DM record all of that, rearrange all of our flags and things like that, and establish a new order, and you won't ever remember that, oh, my turn is always after this person's turn, if that kind of thing happened. But that would be a much more random element to combat, right? If you want the random element to combat, then you should be determining initiative from round to round with that little bit of influence from your dexterity. But no, once we've gone through that ritual on the very first turn of combat, we establish that, and now there's no more chaos to combat. Your advantage is only on basically the very first strike, that you may get to attack before an enemy gets to attack, but you may have to move up to them anyway, right? So that's not even guaranteed. If you do want to have the random element initiative order, I don't even think what's going on in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is all that bad. This also reduces the amount of dice that you have to roll in order to resolve initiative. I mean, really, how important is initiative? Everyone's going to have to come up with their own answer to that question. But combat requires a lot of dice to be rolled. Is it worth rolling a die for every player and every group of monster and then resolving that order and trying to figure out that order and maintain it from round to round? Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. If you're just trying to add an element of randomness and say that, hey, you're not sure whether you're going to go and then your foe's going to go and then you are going to go, or sometimes your foe may get a second attack on you before you get your second attack, if you want to add that back in, I mean, hey, the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons systems resolves initiative with a lot less fuss in that way. Here it says, to determine initiative order for a round of combat, roll d10 for each side in the battle. Normally this means the DM rolls for the monsters, while one of the players rolls for the PC parties. Low roll wins initiative. If more than 2 sides are involved in combat, the remaining side acts in ascending order of initiative. If both or all sides roll the same number for initiative, everything happens simultaneously. All attack rolls, damage, spells, and other actions are completed before any results are applied. It is possible for a wizard to be slain by a goblin who collapses from his sleep spell at the end of the round. So that also means that, yes, the heroes may get initiative once, then the next time the monsters may, and then the monsters may get initiative again and have a second attack before the heroes do. That adds that element with a lot less dice roll. Then you can go around the table, or you can go in your dexterity order or whatever you want when the players are going. But to me, the inherent randomness of the D20, when the dexterity is arguably supposed to be having an effect in how fast you move in combat, hurts the 5th edition system. Arguably, the system could be improved by rolling for initiative every round. Then you would get chaos and tumult in the initiative order, and some people may be able to move faster or slower, or get an edge on somebody else by attacking twice from round to round. But as it stands, you get all the complexity and all the randomness of trying to sort out an initiative order at the very first, but then none of the benefits, because then it just becomes the standard initiative order that everybody is taking from round to round. I think perfectly good initiative systems can be based on randomness. I think they can also be based on much more structured approaches. But it seems like the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition system happens to be sitting right there in the middle where it's got the worst of both worlds. So what do you think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? And in your opinion, what game has the very best initiative system? And what is it? I'd like to talk about it. Put it down in the comments.